Okay, in this video here, we're going to go ahead and look at how we can create some brushes. We're going to look at creating an insert mesh and an insert multi-mesh brush. They're basically the same brush, although the insert multi-mesh brush gives you more flexibility, if you will, all right, and more choices. So to begin, let's go ahead and load up a piece of geometry. I'm going to click on the big square here in my tool palette and bring out a plane 3D. We'll click and drag that onto the canvas. Go ahead and hit T to put it in edit mode. I'm going to hold shift and move it so that it's locked into an orthographic view. And I'm going to change the material type. And remember, anytime we bring out one of these primitive meshes here, we need to go ahead and make it a poly mesh 3D. If we try to sculpt on it right now, it's going to give us a warning. So let's go ahead and make it a poly mesh 3D. And now we've got an actual piece of geometry that we can work with here. So let's look first at the insert mesh brush. We do have some examples that come with ZBrush that we can look at. So if I hit B for brush and then I to isolate all of the eye brushes, I'm going to go ahead and select the insert sphere brush right here. In 4R8, ZBrush 4R8, a new feature is whenever you choose a insert mesh or an insert multi-mesh brush, we get a preview of what that brush is along here. So with a singular insert mesh brush, this insert sphere, if I come over to my piece of geometry and simply click and drag, there you go, you can see exactly what that does. It inserts a sphere into that piece of geometry. Okay, let's undo that again, just so you can see. We got the sphere there, just click and drag, and there we go. Now, I want you to notice one thing. When I bring this sphere out, the piece of geometry that I'm bringing it out on becomes masked, and that's really important to understand. So I bring this out, and that piece of geometry below it gets masked. That gets masked because it allows us, at this point now, to make changes to this piece of geometry right here. So I could move this, change the shape on it if I want. I can come in and use my transpose move and move that back or forth. Place it however I want, scale it, rotate it, do whatever we want with this piece of geometry and not affect the piece of geometry that we are using right here to insert upon. All right. Now, one thing that you should get in the habit of doing anytime you use an insert mesh brush is coming over to your subtool palette. Oops, there we go. And right now you can see both of these pieces are one subtool. All right, when you insert something in there, they remain one subtool. And what you need to get in the habit of doing is coming down here to where it says split, and we'll open that up. And right here where it says split unmasked points. So when I click on that, you'll notice that right here now it has split the two pieces of geometry into their own separate subtools. So now I can come in here and I can do whatever I want with this piece of geometry without affecting the underlying piece right there. All right, so hopefully that's understood. Anytime you use an insert mesh brush, you should get in the habit of applying that piece of geometry. So let's turn this off. We'll go back up here. All right, we'll turn this back off. Let's go ahead and hit B and then I, and we'll bring out the insert cylinder. Again, click and drag on that right there. The back piece gets masked. We can come over here now and move this out, perhaps scale this down, maybe make this longer. We have all kinds of control over what we're going to do with this. Come back over here to subtool and split, and we will split unmasked parts. So now again, we've moved that now into its own subtool. All right. Again, that just gives us more control and more flexibility over each individual item. You always want to keep your pieces as separate as possible, again, just to give you, the artist, more freedom and flexibility and control. All right, so that is what an insert mesh brush does. Let's look at how we might create an insert mesh brush. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and initialize ZBrush, and we'll say yes. Okay, and we'll give it a second here. There we go. I'm going to hit my startup button here. That neutralizes my screen and resets my auto timer. All right. So let's go ahead now and bring out a sphere. So I'm going to come out here and I'm going to bring out a sphere. We'll click and drag, bring that out there. Hit T again to put that in edit, and I'm going to change to the basic material right here. We'll go ahead and make that a polymesh 3D, and I'm going to open up my subtool palette. Now remember, with all of these primitives that we bring out, we end up having this horrible pole on it, and you usually want to get rid of that pole if you plan on doing any sculpting on that piece of geometry. All right, and remember, the best way to do that is just simply turn it into a Dynamesh. So with the Dynamesh resolution at 128, actually I'm going to up the resolution here to say 256 and hit enter, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit Dynamesh. There we go. There we go. Oops. Turn that on. All right. Somehow I got my resolution got jacked up here. Let me turn this off here. Or actually, let me knock this down to 256. We'll try this again. 256. Hit enter. Okay. And then I'm going to hold control, marquee select. We're going to go from 1.9 million to 172,000. So that's a little bit better right there. All right. We'll turn our poly frame off. And it looks like we somehow duplicated our geometry. So let me hit Control N. There we go. Okay. So again, I'm going to look at the floor right here. I want to see where that little blue spike is. That blue spike tells you that's the front. Okay. There we go. All right. So we've got a sphere. It's a Dynamesh sphere. It's 172,000 polygons. It's fairly dense, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and turn Dynamesh off. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this guy once and twice. Okay, so we've got our 3 spheres duplicated right here. They're all sitting on top of each other. I'm going to go ahead and select the middle sphere. I'm going to turn on my transparency, and I'm going to scroll down here to my deformation, and I'm going to take the size of that one sphere down. So you can see with the transparency turned on, we can see how much we're shrinking that sphere. So I'm going to lower it down to something like this right here. Okay, maybe a little bit bigger. All right, something like that. That's good. I'm going to turn my transparency off and come back up here, and I'm going to go to this very first sphere. Now, on this first sphere, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my trim curve brush. All right, the trim curve brush right here will allow you to make a cut in the geometry. So to use this, you have to use Control and Shift. Okay, we'll say OK. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift and drag out a line. And what you'll see on this line is that it has a shaded side and a non-shaded side. Everything on the shaded side of that line is going to be cut away. Okay, and everything above it will remain. So as I drag that line out, okay, I can drag it out, and you can see I can move it just like this. I can also hold the space bar, and I can move that around as well. So I can place this about halfway, and then tip it up a little bit, okay, something like this. Okay, and everything below that shaded line will be cut away from that sphere. So now if we isolate that sphere, all right, you can see this is what we get. All right, I'm going to now go to this sphere right here. All right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift, and we're going to drag it out this way. And now remember, everything above, everything on that shaded line is going to be cut away. So I'm going to drag this out here, and we're going to let go, something like that. There we go. So this is what we get. All right, we've got our inner sphere right here, which is this guy, our outer sphere, which is the top, and our bottom sphere, which is this guy right here. Okay, and if you're confused on what this is going to be, just give me a second and you'll see. Hey, that rhymes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this top one right here, this top sphere. I'm going to come over here to below here to merge, and I'm going to merge down. So watch what happens here. I'm going to merge down. Okay. Now, normally when you hit merge down, you'll get a little pop-up window that says, "Are you sure?" And you can just go ahead and hit yes. Okay. That window always pops up the very first time you use the merge or the split button. All right. And I'm going to merge down one more time. All right. So that all of these pieces are in one subtool right here. If I turn on my poly frame, all right, you'll see that each one of these things is a separate subtool, a separate polygon. If I come over to my poly groups window right here, poly groups, right, I can click on auto groups, and that will make sure that each piece of geometry there is its own separate poly group. This will be important later. Okay. All right, so we've got one subtool with 3 different poly groups of geometry right here, one piece of geometry. All right. I'm going to double click on my divider right here, and I'm going to open up my brush palette, and we'll drag this over. Okay, and if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see right here where it says create. All right, so we'll open that up, and right there you'll see create insert mesh. So let's go ahead and click on that, and when we do, we get this window right here. And it's saying, it's asking us, do we want to create a new brush or append it to our already existing brush? Right now we have the standard brush selected. If we append it, we will be changing the nature of that standard brush. All right. So what we want to do is create a new brush. So we'll say new. All right. There we go right there. There is our sphere. Well, I can come over here and I should rename this. Let's go ahead and I'm going to name this eyeball. There we go. Okay, eyeball. And so there's our sphere right there. We hit create insert mesh brush. There it is. So now let's go ahead and test it out. I'm going to go ahead and load up a tool that I happen to have right here. All right, we'll open this guy up. All right, so this is what we have. We've got our insert mesh brush is still right here. I'm going to make sure that my symmetry is turned on, and I'm going to go ahead and click and drag. And there we go. We've created some kind of cartoon eyes. Again, notice that that gets masked out right there. So this allows us to come in here and go ahead and push those in. All right, move them out a little bit. We can even rotate them a little if we want. Okay, there we go. So we've created some cartoon eyes that we can insert at any point. All right, something like that. There we go. There we go. And again, remember the main piece gets masked out so that, and our eyes are not, so we can come down here and go to split and split unmasked points. So there we go. Now our eyes are in a separate subtool palette right there. And if we look at our poly frames, okay, you can see, oops, that we have individual poly groups. And we should still have individual poly groups. If we don't, we can come down to our, again, down to poly groups and hit auto group. There we go. And now if we use our move right here, our move transpose, or sorry, move topological brush, all right, our move topological brush will allow us to move individual polygons. If I use my move brush here and I come in and I want to just grab that top lid, okay, with my move brush, you'll see that even with a small draw size, as I try to move that, I'm affecting the geometry below it. You see that? I'm affecting that geometry right there. All right. So if I use my move topological, it will respect the poly groups. So let's just turn this off so you can see this a little bit better. All right. And again, with the move topological, it will respect the poly groups a little bit better. So now I can come in here and I can start to move this piece down and maybe move this piece up. Okay. And again, this is another one of the reasons you want to separate your geometry. It just allows you more freedom, more control. All right. So again, you can see with the Move Topological brush, it'll, even though these are all merged together as basically one piece, the Move Topological brush will respect the poly groups. Okay, so something like that. Let's hit F and move that back. There we go. Okay, so that's the Insert Mesh brush. I can go back to that brush right there. Let's go up to Brush, and we're going to Save As. Okay, and I'm going to save as Insert Mesh, or let's just call this IMEYE, I. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in my Applications folder. All right, ZBrush 4R8. And I'm going to go ahead and put that right into the ZBrushes folder. Now in the ZBrushes folder, there are a series of subfolders. I have an insert and an IMM folder right here, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. If you don't have an insert or an IMM folder, you can go ahead down here and create a new folder, all right, and just call it whatever you want. And I'm going to put my IM Insert Mesh iBrush right inside here. All right, notice that it's saving it as a ZBP, all right, that's a ZBrush preset. So let's go ahead and save that. Okay, and now if I hit comma for my lightbox and I go into brush and I find my Insert Mesh folder, which is right here. I'll open that up. And as I scroll along, there it is. There's my Insert Mesh brush, along with all of my other Insert Mesh brushes. Okay, so I can save that out as its own brush, and I can use that anytime that I have a, say, cartoon character and I want to drop some cartoon eyes in there. All right, that's the Insert Mesh brush. It's very easy to make. The only thing that you really need to understand is that whatever piece of geometry you have on your screen, when you come over to Brush, Create Insert Mesh, you know, I can take this entire head right here. Okay, let's turn this off. Let's lower this. If I were to take this guy right here and come over and hit Create Insert Mesh, it's going to ask me now, do I want create a new brush or do I want to append it to this already existing brush? Let's go ahead and append it. Okay, and we'll say OK. And there you go. So now you can see I've got two things in there. If I click on this guy and then click and drag, now that's become an Insert Mesh brush. Anything that's on your canvas can be an Insert Mesh brush. All right. For example, let's undo this and just come back over here. Okay. I'm going to take this guy right here. Let me go ahead and just click on him for a second and bring out this. Let me load up another tool I've got. Okay. Right here. And right, where is it here? Oops, sorry, right here, Insert Mesh, ear, here we go, right there. Okay. So let me go back to this guy. So what you're seeing right here is I have an ear that I sculpted. You know, I sculpted this a long time ago. It was actually part of an actual character, and all I did was isolate the ear out of it and delete the rest of the character. Okay, and I can make an Insert Mesh brush out of this. Okay, so just by again coming over here and saying Create Insert Mesh, we will append it. We'll say OK. All right. So now we've got this guy. So if I come back over here and let's go ahead and I'm going to use the trim dynamic brush right here, and I'm just going to knock back these ears a little bit here. Just knock those back just a bit. All right, and smooth that out, and then we'll go back to my brush. We'll go back to the insert ear, and again make sure that the symmetry is turned on. Click and drag that out. There you go. So I made one ear years ago, and I can reuse that ear over and over again. Now, one thing to note here, notice how far off the head it comes. We can come in here and we can move that. Okay, let's undo that. Let's come back over here. But what we can also do with this particular brush right here, if I, again, let's undo this. There we go. With this brush right here, if you in the brush palette, in the brush menu, if you scroll down, you'll see depth. So let's click on this. I'm going to move this depth down. And now let's go ahead and try inserting that ear again. And there you go. So it's inserting a little bit further, a little bit too much to be honest. So let's move this up a bit, something like that. And then again, click and drag. And that's a little bit better. But let's go ahead and move this up a bit more. There we go. And there you go. So that's a little bit better right there. We could still come in and move that, but we can control the depth of it with the depth right here. And once we've set our depth, we would come back up here and where is it here? Sorry, create insert mesh again to update this file. Okay. So that is creating an insert mesh brush. Whatever geometry you have on your desktop, if you come over to brush, go to create, and create insert mesh brush, you will create a new brush. You would then want to again save as so that you can save all of those brushes together. Okay, let's cancel that out. That's the insert mesh brush. If you have any questions on that, please let me know.